Big thanks to all of you here, all the members in our sanctuary, as well as all of our streaming members. It really is just so special after having had a call and having gone away somewhat to do Homes Institute for several years, to be back here in my home with my spiritual family to share a talk and be in the role of minister for the very first time. So thank you so much. A very special day, and I appreciate the welcome, as well as the music that launched and the beautiful reading and the way we've been brought to center by Pam and the gracious introduction from Marguerite. I was mulling over under the theme of finding our way, what to talk about, and I was playing with some things, which I don't know if I can do this without making a mess, but I was playing with these, I guess there it is. I have my, coloring things, and I was playing with them, looking for some inspiration about finding my way. And I was mindful that I also had received quite a bit of, teaching, and I'd spent time over the 3 years going into sacred and ancient traditions, and here I was playing with coloring toys. I did not progress very far in my formal education with coloring beyond about the second grade level, so I did not bring that work to share today. No. I did, though, later on have, I went to an engineering school, even though I didn't like engineering classes and studied more science. But I kind of analyzed the problem and came up with, I thought, a pretty good tool that one could use to find their way from where do we start and how to get to some kind of a destination. And I had things like beauty and so forth and transformation, and that was interesting. But at the end, I had an inspiration that the destination was coming to a point where any of us would turn to the world around us, turn to Spirit, and just say, color me beautiful, and own our beauty, which is our sacred contribution, that spark of life and uniqueness in us that brings us to contribute, to engage with family, loved ones, work, community, spiritual family. And that seemed interesting. So I went back and pulled up some resources and worked on it a bit. And I actually came up with a few thoughts that I'll share with you. And then at the end, I have a little exercise we can share that's kind of inspired off of the reading and reflection that I did that, to me, actually develops the thought of beauty as a concept for finding our way. And I thought that was kind of cool, and that's one of the things you get to do is find the cool stuff and share it. That's part of ministry, sharing the cool stuff. And that's why, as I've enjoyed what Reverend Sandy and Reverend Kirk do, the things that I've heard Reverend Roger share from the pulpit, as well as a professor in my classes. Reverends get to find the cool stuff and bring it back to us. So that's what I'm about today. I was reminded in part as I was drawing my diagram about how wayfinding used to be about maps and how you could go to the AAA and get a map and you could figure out where you're starting and where you're going and have your journey. And I remembered back that there were some people doing philosophy, of which I've done a lot more in the past several years than ever in my life. Philosophy, and there were the French, and there was René Descartes, and he was developing kind of the Cartesian system, and they went from mathematical geography to geography map making and maps to help Columbus go off the edge and find the new world and all kinds of cool stuff, latitude, longitude, and a bunch of wonderful things. But then I began thinking about, that's nice, but what is our destination? When we show up, where are we trying to get to? And it occurred to me that perhaps one way to express the common destination of humankind is that we want to get to beautiful. Isn't that a way to describe that destination? We want to get to beautiful, where we perceive the world around us as a beautiful world, where we perceive the people in our interactions with them. I think I've got a little sound pop. Let's see if that helps. as beautiful. Wouldn't that be cool? To experience from waking up in the morning, remembering our dreams, encountering the day, and moving on through, and going, what a beautiful life. And so I was imagining that might be, in finding our way, the sacred destination. So then I looked at how we talk about beauty, and I did a little bit of research out there, and I found that back in 1987, the American Psychological Association had some people publish a study, and they found that they thought infants 2 months old preferred to look at beautiful faces. And the professors who did the study said, well, they haven't been reading Vogue magazine, these 2-month-old infants, so what is the basis for that, and are we measuring anything? And you can kind of see that they were out there in the world of effects, in the rational world, the world of judgment, trying to figure this beauty thing out. And they got some observations, but they didn't really dial it in to a significant result that they were cheering about. And then more recently, there was some work in 1994 where some very accomplished professors in economics at the Harvard and Wesleyan universities did some research, and they said, well, that people in the workforce, if they're attractive, beautiful, could earn 12 or 14% more than average people. And so they tried to work at that and see if they could figure something deep out of it. And that research didn't take them anywhere. Did not work at all. So I reflected on what was out there and what people were saying about that external objective beauty thing, and I felt that was a false lead. And then I looked at, in this spiritual generation that I feel that I'm living in, how do we sense beauty? And it occurred to me that when I wake up in the morning, it's the sun breaking through from the eastern foothills. It's the blooms of the flowers. I look at those and I see beauty, Spirit's work, creating the amazing world we live in. That I look at the face of a loved one, people that I'm working with doing something special, or how I regard my spiritual family when I come here. And I was saying, well, now there's beautiful. If beautiful's a destination, I've found it. I look and I see it and I appreciate it. How cool is that? And then I went back, in part because at Holmes Institute, part of the training was looking back to the ancient writings. And I found an interesting story from ancient India, the Hindu tradition, about Akbar and Birbal. Akbar and Birbal, who are they? So Akbar was the emperor in charge of the whole thing, and Birbal in that court was the minister, the wise counselor. So Akbar tells Birbal and all the members of the court that they should bring the most beautiful child in the world to him. The most beautiful child in the world. So the ministers and the court members go out, and they bring in some children, and then at the front, they put Akbar's grandson. Not a bad choice. And Akbar says, behold, you have found and brought back the most beautiful child in the world, and I applaud you. And Birbal, who has this relationship with Akbar, I haven't read all of Akbar and Birbal, but I'll be reading some more because it's a fascinating relationship. He says, I disagree. This one is not the most beautiful child in the world. We have not yet solved the question correctly. And so Akbar's curious and says to Birbal, oh, what are you talking about? This is the one. And Birbal's got some nerve, I'll give him that, and says, please, take off the crown, dress as a commoner, and come with me. And so they go on walkabout, and when they get down near the more fragile, less well-off part of town, Birbal says, come over here, outside of this hovel, this shack. And they see a little baby playing in the dirt. And Akbar says, look at that ugly baby. That's an ugly baby. And Birbal says, perhaps you're mistaken. Perhaps he's beautiful. Perhaps he's the most beautiful baby in the world. And Akbar says, I'm not buying it. I don't think so. Birbal says, well, let's conduct the experiment. And Beerball goes up and gently pinches the baby, just a little pinch like that. And then they run back to hide. And what happens? The baby starts to cry. Surprised. Ouch. Wails. The mother comes running out to the child, picks up the infant, and says, "Who dared touch my moon, my beautiful sun, my priceless diamond?" Comforts the baby, and the baby starts cooing, and mom is smiling, and all is well. Akbar turns towards Beerball and says, "How can this woman consider the child as beautiful?" Beerball responds, "See, didn't I tell you that he is the most beautiful boy in the world?" And made the point that to the parents and the grandparents, the child is always beautiful. And he said, just like you considered your prince to be the most beautiful one, all the parents consider and behold their children as beautiful. And as the story goes, Akbar was humbled by this great teaching of Beerball. So from the time in the lore of the ancient Hindu. And so truly, when you start to look at beauty, it's not that objective, judgmental stuff. It's the eye of spirit within, looking out, regarding the world, forming an assessment in a different way, a whole different way. The assessment of standing in, being that spiritual being, having that human experience, and beholding beauty. I think there's two parts to it, actually. One is beholding beauty, but the other is stepping up and taking the risk and being willing to be held as beautiful. And we'll do a little bit of that towards the end of the talk that I'm sharing. But I'd next like to just comment from another source, going back to how one of the apostles wrote in the Bible. In 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 3 and 4, you start to dial in the same way, that your beauty should not come from outward adornment, such as elaborate hairstyles and the wearing of gold jewelry or fine clothes. Rather, it should be that of your inner self, the unfading beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is of great worth in God's sight. Isn't that beauty? And if we're living a spiritual life and we want to find a way to our destination of a world that's illuminated with beauty, isn't that it? It's about opening our heart, not only to others, but opening our heart and our eyes and perceiving and honoring the beauty in the world, which is on a different plane from all the judgment stuff and the things that get promoted, media and slick pictures and stuff like that. It is not about that. That's not where beauty lives. Beauty is something that we sense with the divine eye within. Or also, we can take a step towards Ernest Holmes in the same text that Pam read from so eloquently this morning, where Ernest wrote, "We do not see beauty. The artist feels beauty and depicts it as best he can, and the result is what we call the beautiful." And now follow this next part. "We do not see life. We experience living. Causation is invisible." Causation is invisible. And what we do is we experience living. That's amazing considering the time that Ernest wrote this and the way the world has evolved since then. You can go to one of the Science of Mind classes that are offered around here, or come to a few talks, and as you start to grab the principles, there is this thing, causation. There are laws. We can use causation to do good for the world around us, for our community, for our loved ones. Causation is invisible. We set it in motion, and the result is we experience living. It's on us to open our eyes, our spiritual inner eyes, and perceive the beauty that's here, the beauty that's everywhere, the beauty that we create, It's there for us to be discovered, and once we discover it and appreciate it, we can work with it. We can live a very different life that becomes open and available. So I did have a thought here of something we might do together. This is kind of, and even if you're here for the first time, it's very simple. We're kind of an advanced community. What Sandy and Kirk have convened and what we've all contributed to is somewhat of an advanced spiritual community. So we'll do just a little bit of an exercise. And I've actually asked Pam if she would help me. I'm going to do this little response and reaction with Pam, and then I'll ask each of you to turn to a neighbor and do it. So we'll start with Pam saying, "Please color me beautiful." That's the request. "Please color me beautiful." And I'll respond and I'll just say, "You're beautiful. I celebrate your beauty." So it's got kind of the two parts. The one is I'm open and vulnerable to being discovered for that spiritual being, beautiful and amazing that I am. And then the other is the acknowledgement. And then we'll return and do it, and then I'll ask those of you who wish to join and do it as well.
Okay. Color me beautiful.
You're beautiful. I celebrate your beauty. Please color me beautiful.
You're beautiful. I celebrate your beauty.
Oh. So please turn to someone next to you. It can be a friend or a stranger. And the first is, "Please color me beautiful." And then, "You're beautiful. I celebrate your beauty." Please. I see a few smiles. So how does that work? What is going on here? Sometimes it's easy when we're in the rush of a day and, the events of the world, whether it's a tough interaction with, a vendor or some business or a frustration with a family member, sometimes it looks like goodness and beauty might be external. I think really the big lesson here, the advanced lesson, is that we're all here as these amazing spiritual beings. And to the extent that we're willing to stand up and say, "Please color me beautiful," to all the ways that Spirit comes in all the people and faces and opportunities around it, to the extent that we know that Spirit is not some hidden thing, some abstract thing and not in the sky or hiding under the ground, but coming through all the people who come to us, whether they're streaming or whether they're here. That's how Spirit shows up. That's how Spirit discovers beauty. So if we're willing to manifest the divine that works through us and be found as beautiful, to be colored beautiful as people paint us, as they regard us, that's the part of the equation, one part. And then the other part is just simply our own willingness and our capacity to open our heart in every dimension and perceive the beauty around us. So I'd like to close this with just a very simple word of what an honor it is to be in spiritual community. What a miracle it is here at InSpirit to celebrate with souls who stand in their divine magnificence, express the awesome creativity, wonder, and beauty of Spirit through their human expression, to be uncovered, known as beautiful, to be appreciated. And how grateful I am that as I express Spirit, beauty, and wonder, to be received, blessed, and appreciated in return. It is Spirit coming together in the divine dance. It is community rising, uplifting, and fulfilling. It is us, it is today, and now, and every day. And we seal it as together we say, and so it is. Thank you.